For me, baseball's been one of the things that's been a really consistent, fun, challenging part of my life. From being a player up through the collegiate level at Baylor University to moving on shortly after playing in college to being a head coach in college. It was just something that was always a passion of mine. And the one thing that that I really started to see throughout my journeys in baseball was just kind of the screen or the netting or the walls between the special needs community and the field. And I started to think, it'd be great if we could find a bridge for the special needs community to get involved with baseball at the level to which we're working at that time collegiately and then professionally. And now in my current position as a high school baseball coach, still the passion to share the game. And hopefully the game would provide things that have provided me: consistency, love, affirmation, challenge, success, failure. I mean, all of it. So
it was James's baby, and he told me about what he was doing. We talked a lot after Frisco Rough Riders games when James was working there, and I fell in love with the concept and the logo and the whole idea. I was, in on it from when he told me about it.
I had kids come into our program years ago and not very confident, not verbal, not really wondering, not really knowing if they wanted to come in and be a part of what we were doing. And now it's just to see the kids with the confidence and the boldness and, so proud of themselves, and we're proud of them too.
Just in general, not only the organization, what motivates both of you?
Keeper of the game. It's just, it's seeing what it does for kids, how much they get out of it. But some of the one thing when I volunteer at the Frisco Miracle League, and I insist if I'm volunteering, I'm going to pitch. The reason is selfish. When you stand out there and pitch to these kids, you see how excited they get. The bat hits the ball, their face lights up. It just energizes you. And just being able to provide for these kids and give them other opportunities and to kind of foster their love for baseball is it's heartwarming. And then seeing how personally how some of these kids have grown and matured and individually become functioning parts of our community. Clayton was about 6 years old when we first met him. He would hide behind his mom's leg, and just you'd get him to say a word or two to you, and that was about it. Now he insists on singing the national anthem at everything we do.
Every event. Yep. It's kind of fun. It's kind of funny because we always talk about our events. This is how we start the events. Clayton, again, who would not come out from behind his mom when he came out to events, and here's Tina trying to integrate her son into social settings, and she's like, get off my leg and go out there, go. He went from that to every event starts, Clayton sings the national anthem, his mom cries, and then we start every time. It's like clockwork. So
Clayton even does that at when he's at Miracle League now. He has to get there 2 hours early and do PA or play-by-play for the other games that he's not involved in.
Oh wow, he's doing everything now.
He's a stud. Yeah. But that's exactly what Brian was talking about, hitting on. When he comes through the door, how excited he is, and he's always in his keeper gear, and we're his team, and it's a safe place, and he's valued, he's accepted, he's exceptional when he shows up. It's not like going into a social setting where he feels uncomfortable or looked at differently. It's his house, you know, and those are things that as we see that what's ironic about, you know, the whole situation of not aging out, the ironic part is we get the gift of watching these kids continue to grow. I mean, that's a gift for us because we're like, we go through pictures and we see kids that we had from year one. And now, you know, I mean, it's almost 10 years later. And you're just watching where you can, if you go into our photo albums, you can watch kids grow up through our photo albums. It's amazing. And sometimes I just sit there for, you know, an hour and I just scroll through events that we had and just you go through memory lane. And we've had some cool events, big movie night, RP11 bowling. We've had events with Endless at the Miracle League. Brian heads up all of our Miracle League, you know, all of our programming there, onto big events at the Frisco Rough Riders AA Stadium, where, you know, we're out there and these kids that come out there are so shy. I mean, I remember a kid, Dom, one time, he was so shy coming out. He didn't know if he wanted to play or whatever. And about a half hour into our program, he hit a ball, he ran down to first base, he stands on first base, and he flexes like this. Ryan, you remember that picture?
Yes.
He flexes like this. And I promise you, he turns to the stands and finds his mom and he's like, "We're not going home. We're not going home. Like, I'm staying here." And I was like, that's awesome. Like before it was like, please get on the field and try this. Just go sit down in the grass and hang out for a minute, you know. And all of a sudden he's like, "I'm not going home." those are, "Mom, I'm not going home." And he's like, am I going home? I'm like, no, you're not going home yet. Like, oh my gosh, this is great. So those are the moments that really stand out. And to answer your question directly, did we ever think it was going to have this much impact? We had hoped so. We really did. But when you're James Vlade and you're Brian Hochter, and he's sitting in my kitchen and I'm looking at him going, "Brian, I'm so frustrated with this paperwork, and we're trying to get our 501c3 and we're trying to do stuff to give, and the form comes back and here's another request." And, you know, honestly, the blessing for me is that where my strengths are not in that. My strengths are in other areas, but Brian taught me a pretty good lesson in perseverance on staying through it. And you know, like, "Hey man, we're almost to the goal line. Once we get it done, we never have to do this again. We're stamped." So I had always hoped we'd get to this point, but I have to be honest, when we first started, it was you know, there was definitely some doubt early on in the process, but, you know, just kept praying about it and obviously surrounding ourselves with good people, because Brian and I have been in charge with building our team. And, you know, Brian's a good GM, I can tell you that. Anything for the kids, we get it done. One of our keeper kids, her name's Amber McDonald, and she's like my little sister. She's kind of been with me for the last 9 years, wherever I've been, Frisco Rough Riders, coaching at Oklahoma State. And so when I came to, when I moved back to the area, I had scouted for the Miami Marlins for 2 years, and unfortunately got sick and had heart surgery, and that's all behind us now. But I decided after the heart surgery that traveling 65,000 miles a year scouting was probably not going to be the best thing for me. So I took a high school job last year. It was my first year to coach in high school, and Amber came with me. And if you look at we won the state championship in our first year. It was
wow.
It was amazing. Like, Brian had asked me, like, "Hey, how's it going?" I said, "We're trying to get through practice, you know." That's what we're doing. We're trying to win practice. But when you look at every state championship photo that we have, you know, Amber's in there, front and center, allowed on the field, she'll come and practice with us.
Can you tell me a little bit about how the organization helps the confidence level for the players in not only baseball, but everyday life?
That's the thing that I love most about it. That when a kid with special needs, especially kids on the spectrum, find something that they are interested in or fall in love with, they're just like, it's kind of hyper focused on that. And the whole keeper of the game setting, when kids are doing clinics and they're going to games and things like that, it brings out the social element in them that uh, often you don't see. And it just, we've got a handful of kids that their confidence has gone through the roof from when we met them. A lot of it really has to do with the foundation and finding a love for baseball.
The minute that a kid walks through the door or on the field, or comes into one of the special events for keeper of the game, they know they're loved. Like, we're their team. You know, so, like, a lot of people look at it and they say, "Who's your team?" I'm like, oh, okay, well, I like the Yankees, or I like the Pirates, or I like the Dodgers. Who's your team? A lot of our kids, when you ask them who's your team, they say keeper of the game. And so our logo represents their team and them. And there's never a time where they're not cared about at a high level, where they're not loved, where they're not appreciated and celebrated. And Brian and I made a decision really early that if we were going to try to build our mission of serving kids with special needs and disabilities, the one thing that we really needed to do was we needed to try to find team building exercises for people to be a part of what we're doing, where we can explain our mission in a very simplistic form and engage people in the foundation.
The thing like the food drive, it's just grown. What we do for the community through that, how many meals and people who are in need are getting help by that. It's just amazing.
Food drive started on probably a 10 by 10 area on the floor of a local batting cage owned by former major leaguer Jason Jennings, who we approached and said, "Hey, we want to do a food drive. Could this be a point?" And it went from people carrying bags to like us needing trucks, like box trucks, to deliver food. And we're talking manpower of hundreds of people. So it went from like, how many, Brian and I would joke, how many bags can you carry out to the back of the car, and now it's, Brian's scheduling, it's like a fleet service now. There's vehicles in and out. So it's really amazing to see where it's come, and from a very simple concept of how we can pull people together, it became something that is heavily depended on by our community.
On your website, a lot of t-shirts and stuff you sent me say RP11.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about the significance on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So RP11 is a program that we run through Keeper of the Game Foundation. It's really one of our partner programs. One of my former teammates who is heavily involved in the starting of Keeper of the Game and supporting events, and supporting us financially, supporting us through spreading the word. Unfortunately, he had passed away a couple of years ago, and I was, ironically enough, I was captain of the team when he was playing his first year at Baylor, and we were close and we stayed friends. And when he passed away, I guess for me, I felt like, I just felt this strong call to perpetuate Ron's name through Keeper of the Game, a foundation that he loved. I mean, he loved Keeper of the Game. And so we started RP11 to perpetuate Ron's name in the special needs community, and allow his name to stay at the forefront of giving, of servant leadership, and what's right about keeper of the game, because Ron exemplified a person that just absolutely cherished. A lot of times, he was never a guy that wanted to be front and center. He was never a guy that was just, so out in front. I mean, he was a guy that behind the scenes gave advice on, constructing the program and where we could go, and here's some ideas. And he actually brought keeper of the game internationally when he went to the Dominican Republic, which got us exposure to the Dominican. And obviously we know the baseball culture down there is amazing in the DR. So Ron had a pretty worldly lens for us. And when we lost him, we didn't want to lose his vision. And so we started RP11, and it really took on a life of its own, where we started the Ron Patterson Scholarship Fund, which provides education for special needs students. And it's really, as Ron and I would always talk about, when servant leadership meets inclusion, it's a very powerful thing. And RP11 stands for servant leadership, and it definitely stands for inclusion. And Ron Patterson, and number 11 was the number that he wore when he played in college. So that's where we got RP11. It was actually a tag when he had passed away. One of our mutual teammates said, hey, we're gonna miss you, RP11, and that was it. I was like, that's it. And I called Brian. I'm like, that's it. Brian's the one that brings a really favorable balance to the foundation, with him, having raised a special needs child who is as high functioning as anybody. But Brian brings that balance to what we're trying to do. And when that came up, he had some ideas too, and it was like, all right, we can put wheels on this. And last year, in our first attempt, we raised $35,000 for a scholarship fund, and this year we're estimated to bring in about 50,000.
Wow!
So, there's one thing I wanted to ask, Brian. When you're at an event, what's your favorite part of the event?
Anytime we do one of the clinics,
Yeah,
we usually do a home run derby.
Yeah, that's
And,
true.
The one cool thing that James came up with was, we get the kids, they're hitting off a tee. All the volunteers go to the outfield. They become the outfield wall. We're going to make sure every kid hits a home run. So there's kids like Bryce that can just knock the snot out of the ball. We're backing the wall way up.
Yeah.
And as kids who make contact, we're getting as close as we can and letting it get through the wall. But, it's just exciting and fun to watch.
Yeah. The human wall. So Michael, here comes the 6-year-old, right? And there's like 50, 60 adults making a human outfield wall. Right. And then Brian's like, bring him in. And here comes everybody. And then they set up. A passion for keeper of the game is knowing that I always want these kids to know that they're loved, that they always have a team, that they're always going to have coaches, and that they're going to always have a place that they can call home, something to really look forward to. And, for me, my passion comes from obviously having a learning disability and being in remedial classes, being in special placement academically. It was a challenge for me. And unfortunately, I was going through it in a time where there wasn't a whole lot of support. There wasn't a whole lot of identification for learning disabilities. There was just, oh, this kid wants to learn or this kid doesn't. And how kids learn. And we've come a long way with support, with all kinds of learning disabilities. That's always been a passion of mine to help us assist. And my disability isn't physical. My disability is learning. And, I love baseball so much. I always worked in the classroom to make sure I could play, and eventually, made it through college, and was fortunate enough to earn a master's degree. And I'm just here to show everybody you can do it.